Today we're going to dive into a right that isn't just about politics or some complicated law. It's about our daily survival. It's about the very air we breathe, the water we drink, and really, the world we're leaving behind. So let's get right into it. For millions of people, this right here, this is the reality every single winter. A thick, choking smog that literally blurs the horizon and makes your lungs burn. And look, this isn't just some inconvenience. It's a full-blown public health crisis that can cripple cities like New Delhi, forcing schools to go online and basically telling people to stay indoors. It's a pretty visceral reminder of what's at stake. So it brings up a simple question, but the implications, they're profound. Just imagine for a second a world where clean air isn't a luxury, but a fundamental entitlement, just like the right to life itself. That question is the very heart of what we're talking about today. The solution that's really being championed around the globe is to stop seeing a clean environment as just a good policy goal. The big shift is to frame it as something much more powerful, a fundamental human right.
This whole concept is called the right to a healthy environment, or RHE for short. And the core idea is pretty simple. Human dignity and health are basically impossible without a clean, pollution-free environment. So it's not some brand new, separate right, but an essential piece of the right to life itself.
And hey, don't think this is just some niche idea. In 2022, it got a massive global endorsement. The UN General Assembly officially recognized it as a human right. Now, sure, the resolution isn't legally binding, but it sets a really powerful moral and political standard for the entire world. So what does this right actually look like? Well, the UN framework doesn't just leave it as some vague concept. Instead, it's built on 6 distinct but totally interconnected pillars. These pillars cover all the things you'd expect, right? Breathable air, a stable climate, clean water. But they also go further, including things like healthy ecosystems, sustainable food, and the freedom from toxic pollution. Altogether, they form the foundation for what it means to live a life of dignity. Okay, so you have this big, universal idea. But how does it get real legal power? Well, that happens when nations actually embed it into their own laws. Let's take a look at how this works by focusing on a really key example, India's constitution.
And here's the really clever part. You don't actually have to invent a whole new law from scratch. Instead, what courts and legal experts do is they green existing rights. They interpret the most fundamental rights we already have through an environmental lens, which is a really natural way for the law to evolve.
It all starts right here, with Article 21 of India's Constitution. This is the bedrock, the right to life and personal liberty. It's simple, powerful, and, as it turns out, incredibly adaptable.
And this is where you see that evolution in action. Through a series of landmark cases, India's Supreme Court basically answered a common-sense question. What good is the right to life if you don't have clean air to breathe or clean water to drink? And by doing that, they made the connection legally unbreakable.
But, the Constitution is also pretty clear that this isn't a one-way street. The state has a directive, a duty, to protect and improve the environment. But at the same time, every single citizen has a fundamental duty to do the same. It's really a shared social contract.
So the right exists, but how do you actually enforce it? How do you hold polluters accountable? Well, that's where a set of really powerful legal principles comes into play. You can think of these as the tools that give the right its teeth.
So these 4 pillars are the foundation. First, you've got absolute liability. If you run a hazardous operation, you are 100% responsible for any harm it causes, no excuses. Next is the precautionary principle. This flips the script. It forces a company to prove a project is safe before it can start. Then there's the polluter pays principle. It's exactly what it sounds like. You make the mess, you pay the full cost to clean it up. And finally, the public trust doctrine. This says the state doesn't really own natural resources like rivers and forests, it just manages them in trust for all of us, for the public. Okay, but let's be real. Having a right on paper is one thing. Making it a reality in the world, that's a whole other story. It's so important to understand the very real challenges that stand in the way.
The pressures against this right are immense. There's this constant push for development that can just sideline environmental checks. Governance is often a mess, with underfunded and overlapping agencies that struggle to enforce the rules. This leads to all sorts of conflicts over shared resources, like river water. And the tragic irony is that the marginalized communities, often the best protectors of the environment, are the first to be displaced when it gets destroyed.
So yeah, the challenges are huge, but just acknowledging them is the first step. The next is to build a clear path forward. So let's explore some of the innovative solutions that could actually turn this right into a reality.
You know, maybe the most fundamental shift we need is in how we even measure success. Instead of just looking at the traditional GDP, this idea of a green GDP is getting a lot of traction. This model doesn't just count what we produce, it also subtracts the costs of environmental damage. It's just a much more honest way of tracking our progress.
And there are other concrete steps, too, that focus on better systems. On the government side, that could mean creating a truly independent national environmental authority and empowering the local communities who know the land best. Technologically, it means using real-time pollution monitors and satellite data to keep everyone honest. And geographically, it means managing resources like air and water based on natural boundaries, like airsheds and watersheds, not political lines.
And ultimately, this is the big takeaway. Framing this as a right, it changes everything. It's no longer just a nice-to-have policy that can be traded away for something else. It becomes a binding, non-negotiable legal obligation on the state to protect the health, dignity, and survival of its people.
Which leaves us with a final thought. If a healthy environment is our fundamental right, then what is our fundamental responsibility to make that right a reality for everyone?